It's just that bad. Nobody can believe it. And when people are talking about it, really all over the state, about how bad Aramark is. But the governor supports Aramark 100%. Now, Aramark is a $14 billion corporation. And they're here inside this prison. And what they're doing to the prisoners here is serving them food they wouldn't serve to anybody else.
Hold the thought, Reverend. We're going to do the turnaround as fast as we can, but it's built in, so we'll be right back. World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C., and we are talking to Reverend Pinckney in the Lakeland Correctional Facility in Michigan, where he is held as a political prisoner. So, Reverend, keep going. You were telling us about Aramark.
Yes. Aramark has continued to serve people bad food. Matter of fact, 125 people got food poisoning one day. Then another 90 people got food poisoning, and yet still they won't call the health department or anything in on Aramark. And let me talk about the sleeping facilities here. They got all these people, got more than 1,400 people packed into this area, into this space, to these buildings, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because what they're doing, they're stacking people in bunk beds on top of each other in a small unit, 9 by 12 unit, and we're like, in my cube is 5 people in my cube in an area that's 9 by 12. Now, how do you get 5 people to sleep in an area 9 by 12? It's almost virtually impossible. The clothing itself is we get 2 uniforms to wear, and you got to wear those almost until you leave here. And it's the shoes themselves is almost like walking on the sidewalk. They're bad. I got on about 4 pair of socks, and it's 80 degrees outside in order to keep my feet from hurting from wearing these shoes. But we're fighting this thing. We're showing people what we're capable of doing, and we're going to come back and we're going to do some things. I'm working with the juvenile lifers now. The ones that they gave when they was 15 and 16 years old, they gave life in prison without parole. I'm working with them. I'm trying to get people on the outside to understand how important it is to let some of these folks go home. We have people who have been here 50 years, 40 years. I mean, half the place here, when you think about it, some of these people, in their eyesight, is not never going home. And I'm here at this facility for one reason, because it's closer to my home, and also I can be transported back and forth from court. So that's the good thing about it. But it's a facility that, I tell you, I can write a book about this facility. And believe me, it's amazing, Webster. Nobody will believe exactly what's happening here in America. And you think about being tortured and stuff like that. You're being tortured every day. These prisoners are being tortured every single day. And we have to do something about it. We have to change the way they're doing business. Show these people that, that, hey, I'm in here. If I'm in here and I don't belong in here, there's probably maybe 30 to 40% of the people that's here don't belong here. But we have to stand up and fight. Let the world know that there's a problem with this prison system. It got to stop, Webster. It must stop. So if you have any questions you want to ask me, go right ahead.
It sounds like the conditions, as you say, tantamount to torture or the practical equivalent of torture. Again, I suggest we got to write this up. We got to get this to international agencies, because the U.S. agencies are so corrupt that generally they don't respond. You got to have somebody with an axe to grind. In other words, somebody who's been humiliated or attacked by the U.S. who wants to strike back. Well, under treaties, they can, right? Helsinki Treaty, Organization of American States, or any country under so-called human rights international law. So I would suggest that we somehow get this into a document.
Absolutely. And Webster, the thing that's so important how they have beaten these people down to almost a pulp. You would not believe the attitudes of some of these people here. You would say, absolutely not. Nobody could think on that level. Nobody would do those things. Nobody. They have you trained. They call chow in the morning, okay? Everybody rush out to the chow hall. I never seen nothing like that before in my life. They got them trained to go rushing out. They call at lunchtime. They call chow. Everybody just busts out the door. The yard is open. Everybody just runs out. See, what they're doing is they're training. They're training the prisoners, and they can see how they can train the rest of the world to do what they need to do. So we're dealing with issues here that's so amazing that I'm in total shock. I could not believe it when I first went through this, because they're teaching people that people can be trained to do whatever they want them to do. And that's what we have here. It's more than torture. It's worse than torture, what they have done to the people here. They're almost worthless.
And again, if people want to help with the appeal, they certainly should. And it's bhbanco.org, right? Benton Harbor Black Autonomy Network of Community Organizations, right? bhbanco.org. Correct?
That is correct, and that is correct. And if they want to just mail a check, they can mail it to Banco, BANCO, 1940 Union Avenue, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. And I tell you that I'm struggling right now in order to continue to survive because of the food condition here. I definitely don't eat the food. I try to eat one meal a day that that I can buy from the store, and these prices from the store is almost ridiculous. You would not believe the cost of the food. You can buy a chicken breast out in a package, but the package is so small. And it's when you talk about $3.50 and $3.60 for something like that, it's almost ridiculous. But the point is, you have to eat in order to survive. So I'm limiting myself to one meal a day, to make sure that I stay healthy enough to be able to continue this fight. So I'm doing the things that need to be done, and I want people out there to know that we're at war. This is no conflict. This is the real deal. And somebody got to help with prison reform so we can start getting some of these guys out of here. And I want the listening audience to know.
You have 1 minute remaining.
I might be on the inside, but believe me, I'm fighting as hard as I can to get some of these people on the outside. And I'm doing what I need to do. Webster, I only got 1 minute left for this call, but I want you to know that, hey, I really appreciate you. You have done a tremendous job. And I give you all the praises because, hey, you deserve it, Webster. You deserve it. You and Danielle and the group, y'all have done a tremendous job, and I'm really, really proud of y'all. My wife is proud of y'all, and we're going to continue. I'm planning on being home shortly. It won't be long, but when I get home, I tell you, we're going to have a party, and we're going to have a press conference. We're going to be celebrating, and we're going to show this world what we made of.
And Reverend, the other thing I just want to call to your attention, in Italy, there's a general strike on the 12th of June against Whirlpool by the unions protesting more than 1,000 layoffs.
Oh, wow, that's tremendous. See, you just made my day now. Anytime that you
has nobody told you this? No, this is the Italian Metal Workers Unions, FIM, FIOM, and
Thank you for using Global Tellink.
And we've talked about this, and we will again. So back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Reverend Edward Pinkney continuing the fight, even though he's been in that prison for several months now. And we urge you to support him, bhbanco.org. And you'll find mailing address there too. But now, back to Michael Chiotinis in Athens, and we were up to this idea that the absurdity of the Juncker's proposals seem to be the idea that you want to humiliate Greece, crush Greece. What is it? That they want primitive accumulation against Greece and turn all the Greeks into low-wage workers in German-financed companies? What do we have?
Yes, I was saying 5 years of policies dictated by the Europeans. The Greek society is in ruins, and they insist Greece needs more of it. the effect of it is as follows. Anyone can be the judge of whether this was part of the plan or not, but let me give you some points I have here in my notes. Number one, an enormous pool of low and medium skilled, unemployed, and desperate workers has been and is being created. Number two, they have dismantled the traditional way of living in production based on ownership in a small scale. Not that we should be aiming at that, but what we had. That is what we had, and the basis to work on and to build real industry on. Number three, the state itself, along with the social safety net and labor unions, have been and are being dismantled. Number four, skilled workforce has been and is being driven out of Greece. And number five, they have tried to give incentives for big multinational corporations to quote unquote invest in Greece through privatizations or sellouts, for a better word, in order to gain, I think, in order to gain independence from the BRICS as much as possible. In other words, create sweatshop industry inside the immediate sphere of influence of these financiers, which is very simply all countries under the euro and the dollar. So the sad realization is that the aim here is to build sweatshop economies inside this sphere of influence of the euro and the dollar, for that matter. And indeed, inside the hardcore of the Western world. Don't forget the IMF is a big part of it, as Schäuble insisted it should be. We can point out the TPP also for this, that the plan is to cut the BRICS, the power of the BRICS. So it seems to me that the dollar versus euro battle has been put somewhat on hold since the European Central Bank also announced quantitative easing, QE, and the euro-dollar exchange rate has stabilized near parity. So the kind of social engineering implemented in Greece in the last 5 years, I don't think this was a mistake. I think it was deliberate. Of course, this deliberation is expressed in various levels of consciousness, but we can't continue talking about ideology or rules or ethics or any of these things. It never was about it never was about the lenders wanting to take their money back. That's one of the levels of rhetoric that has been used. A bank bailout was, of course, in the plan, but I don't even think that's the main point. Also, it was never about this ideological insanity about big government and neoliberalism and these kind of things. That was another level of rhetoric used, widely used. They don't care about the efficiency of the state bureaucracy. On the contrary, they care about the dismantling of even this last bit of political institution that gets in the way of a complete colonization of the weaker European economies. In other words, they designed a European political structure that guarantees that the average citizen could not have any power over the decisions that are made. And then, of course, an economic and monetary union under the dictatorship of the European Central Bank and the Maastricht Treaty to advance the social model that fits the interests of finance and the oligarchies that control big industry in Europe, mostly the competitive ones, big German industry and such industries, which of course could have the competitive advantage in a monetary union. So you see what I'm saying here?
Create this vast pool of low-wage labor. Poland would be an example, Eastern Europe, and this plays in somehow to the Ukrainian crisis because Ukraine would emphatically be part of that German-dominated low-wage labor pool.
Yeah.
So, your conclusions?
I think we have to seriously consider ways of getting out of this trap for the weaker European economies. And I think we should try to hijack the euro or the euro should break up, because I don't know what future can these societies have in a union that imposes this kind of a social model. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.